Yes, especially since I come on at the end.
Welcome, Josephine. We'll just check your microphone, please. Can you unmute?
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that sounds very good.
Excellent.
We'll all mute now. Julia's going to go live, so we'll just wait for 3 minutes. Well, good evening, everybody. Judy here in Sydney, and welcome to you all. It's lovely to be back at Benedict's Well together and to taste again that great sense of connection that we've had in all sorts of ways. Today, solstice day, longer stay here, shorter stay for some, and another dimension in our connection. And for us, it's just coming on to sunset here, and we have a special evening, a special overnight. We have the meeting of Pluto and Saturn, which gives a brightness that they think may have been the Bethlehem star. So here we all are on our journey to Christmas, to Bethlehem, and it's very good to be together. like to introduce our prayer leaders now. Susan, who's living in Marseille at the moment, and living in Marseille now, and Josephine from Sydney. And they will lead us in prayer and into meditation. Thank you.
I brought two.
I'm just into this. Be finished in about 5 or 10 minutes.
Do you want to do your meditation? Should I shut the door?
No, they haven't started the meditation. I'm just, hold on. It's not come actually. Or is it not there?
Perhaps everyone could just check that they're muted, and then we have a platform for our prayer. Thank you.
O God, come to our assistance.
O Lord, make haste to help us.
Glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forevermore.
A reading from John Main. It is no good having our spiritual life in order, meditating twice a day, or saying the office together, or any sort of practice of this kind, unless our practical life is equally in order and commensurate with it.
Heavenly Father, open our hearts to the silent presence of the Spirit of your Son. Lead us into that mysterious silence where your love is revealed to all who call, Maranatha, come, Lord Jesus.
Thank you, Susan and Josephine. We'll return to you shortly. It's my great pleasure now to introduce Liz Watson. Liz is known to many of you in the UK and also here in Australia and New Zealand, where she's visited often. Last year, Liz and Graham were here with us at our home, and that was a great pleasure. Liz is a teacher within the community, a retreat leader, spiritual director. She writes, and maybe some of you have listened this year, as I have, to your talks, Liz, on Anne Frank and Etty Hillesum, which I found your teasing out the details of their lives and the hope that they contained very encouraging in these times. So thank you for that, Liz. And tonight you're going to speak to us on incarnation, living the consequences of meditation, which sounds like an intriguing topic. We know it can lead us all sorts of places that we never envisage. So thank you, Liz. We look forward to your talk.
Well, thank you, Judy. Yes, I remember so clearly being with you last January. Seems a short time ago, yet a very long time ago, all at the same time. So it's really great to be here, and thank you for asking me. And maybe my title sounds a bit odd, Incarnation, Living the Consequences of Meditating, but I've taken the opportunity to reflect a bit more, I hope a little bit more clearly, on a way of thinking that's been with me for the last few years. And it's this whole theme of incarnation. What does it mean? So this is the result of my reflections so far. Let's see whether they ring any bells for you. So we're about to celebrate the incarnation, the enfleshing, the Word becoming flesh and dwelling among us, God being gestated and born into time and space for a season like us. Well, if you've been brought up within Christianity, you'll have the Christian teaching of Pat. Jesus was fully human and fully divine. It's simple, really, you might say. But actually, I think that's an utterly mind-bending thing for anyone to say. And it's no wonder it took the church 5 centuries of argument to finally settle on that little formulation. And it did take 5 centuries. And I think what that's meant to say, that church's teaching is trying to say, is that Jesus was completely divine and completely human all at the same time and all of the time. It's not that he was superhuman, that he was not like us, or that he was in some way less than human, just that he was fully human. So it's not that he was sometimes human and sometimes not, or that he was human in some aspects of his action and his personhood and not in others. It's that he was completely, through and through, all the time, human, like us. And similarly with his divinity, he wasn't divine sometimes in some of his actions and in some aspects of his personality and relationships. You can't go through the Gospels and sort out which of his words and actions were divine and which were merely human. It's not that. Nor is it that he was born human like us, but took on his divinity at some special moment, like his baptism or his transfiguration. So that before that particular event, that transforming, divinizing experience, you might say, he was human like us. And then afterwards, everything he thought, felt, and did could justly claim the description God. No, Christian teaching insists Jesus was fully divine from his conception. Well, in his book, Jesus, the Teacher Within, Lawrence suggests to us that our Christian journey is very much bound up with our exploration, our living into and living out of that question that Jesus himself addresses to us. Who do you say that I am? And Lawrence suggests that that question is going to keep us busy for at least the whole of our earthly life.
Liz, you're muted.
Thanks, Eileen. I rested on my paper and clicked the the button. I'll go back a bit. So Lawrence invites us to explore the question for the rest of our life, who do you say that I am? And he suggests that that question is going to keep us busy for at least the whole of our earthly life. And maybe that's why the church took 5 centuries to come up with an answer that didn't fall short of a full understanding of who they had discovered Jesus was, fully human and fully divine. It's as though any other understanding people had come up with just didn't seem enough. It didn't seem to do Jesus full justice. Well, I could just leave you with those words and say, right, go away, think about that, work on that seriously, and then you'll know everything you need to know. But if you're anything like me, you would come back very soon with your mind in a complete tangle. And in a way, that's the point. That understanding is more than the reasoning mind can deal with. It bends our mind, it blows our mind. It's a paradox. It's more like a koan. And it's Lawrence's point. You were only going to know whether that statement is true by living with the question and carrying the answer of the early church somewhere in the back of your mind and seeing where it takes you. Who do you say that I am? What does the incarnation mean? John Main was very clear when he said that our faith isn't a matter of looking up the answer to the big questions of religion in a book and learning them. We have to get close up and personal with it all, get to the heart of it. We have to verify the truths of the faith in our own experience, he insists. Is it true? How do you know? What makes you say that? But people who have got up close and personal, who have lived deeply into the question, always have some interesting things to say to us. I was recently listening to a lecture by one of our patrons, Rowan Williams, on YouTube. And when he was talking about Jesus being fully human and fully divine, he said, what this teaching means is that Jesus is the one who fully allows the Creator to make him who he is. Jesus is the one who fully allows the Creator to make him who he is. It's in Jesus' very nature to be completely aligned with God and therefore completely himself. And it is in God's very nature to be completely God's self, which means utterly at one with creation. Some of you will know Meister Eckhart, a Dominican friar and theologian who was preaching and writing around the turn of the 13th and 14th centuries. And he challenged his listeners and readers to ask themselves this: what good does it do to anyone to know that Jesus was born in Bethlehem way back in history if Christ cannot be born in our souls now? And that's the good news, isn't it? That's the invitation held out to us. That through grace, it's not in our nature as in the same way that it was in Jesus' nature, but through grace, Christ can be born in us today so that our own humanity is gradually more fully realized. A fuller incarnation takes place in us. We become ever more fully ourselves so that we can live differently in our own bodiliness on earth, in time and space, for the little season we have here. And in that talk, Rowan wanted us to be absolutely sure of the implications of that notion of the incarnation. He said it means that God never wants us to be less than fully human. And full means full. God is interested in every bit of us, every bit of our life, Rowan says. Nothing is left out. Body, mind, thought, feeling, actions, relationships, our social life, our economic life, our sexual life, our connectedness with the whole of creation. We could go on and on. And perhaps especially what's not left out are all the bits that we have learned to forget, to ignore, to despise, to be ashamed of, or to be frightened of. After all, that's where Jesus liked to go, wasn't it? Well, John Main invites us to make two commitments. One is to commit ourselves to regular meditation, and the other is to commit ourselves to living the consequences of meditating, as he puts it, to living the consequences of meditating in our daily lives. And I have come to think of this as a way of incarnation for us. We commit ourselves to our times of meditation, where we make ourselves as open as we can to the divine, where we allow the divine action in us ever more freely and fully as the years go by. We try and come without an agenda of our own, or at least we try and let go of our agenda for a while by focusing our attention on the mantra as best we can. That way, we can allow something new, surprising, and unlooked for to be born in us. And what arrives and arises is always surprising and not what we could have made happen ourselves, or even imagined for ourselves or chosen for ourselves. That's the nature of divine action. It is beyond our own desiring and designing. But then we have to be willing to let the new thing born in us be incarnated, is the way I think of it. We have to nurture it, to obey it, to find the courage or the patience to bear it forth and test it out in the rough and tumble of daily living. We have to incarnate it in ourselves so that we gradually become someone different, which we always experience as being more fully ourselves. It won't quite be that we are doing better at one thing or another, although we might well be doing better in various ways, but more that we are becoming people who see life with new eyes and cannot help acting according to the new vision. We have become more fully human, and we can't help but act out of that because it's who we've become. What God has given us, what of Christ has been born in us, has been incarnated in us and made fit for life on earth. By participating more fully in the divine, we come to inhabit our creatureliness more fully. Well, what's that like? I recall once spending some time in one of our great British cathedrals. It was Lincoln Cathedral. I was on the way home from a work assignment and I dropped in for a while. I was soon caught up into a beautiful prayer space in one of the side chapels, and then was washed by the sound of an orchestra practicing for a concert, playing a symphony I loved. And gradually a profound sense of peace came over me, which was so all-pervading and blissful. I wanted to keep hold of it forever. I didn't want to leave the cathedral, because I knew when I did, I would lose the experience. But standing on the cathedral steps, reluctant to step down into the street outside, I suddenly realized this sense of peace meant nothing if I couldn't take it out with me into the world. What's a fleeting experience of peace, however profound it seems at the time? It's just a fleeting experience, unless it gets incarnated and gradually turns you into a peace bringer and peacemaker. We are not angels. We have bodies and earthly lives. In contrast to that, I remember someone telling me about a meditation group they'd been going to but become disillusioned with. Part of the disillusionment was someone saying after meditation, oh no, they couldn't possibly help make the drinks because they were floating around in some sort of spiritual state, as though they were an angel, not a human being. And instinctively, you know that's crazy. And perhaps it's like that for you sometimes after a retreat, especially after the intensity of the school retreat. You want the peace, the joy, the love, the beauty, or the forgiveness you've been given to stay with you at that intensity. Maybe you don't want to go home. And maybe Father Lawrence has already warned you. As soon as you've driven down out of the gate and a mile down the road, you will have lost it. Except for that of it which gets incarnated and really does live in you forever in a way which is a blessing to others as well as to yourself. And I can recall times when I've been leading a meditation session and enjoyed the communication that has happened between us so much and the sense of being in God's presence together. But then coming out into the London street and being faced with something of the ugliness of the world and wanting to run away back to that lovely, cozy sense that I've just left. So tempting, but not to be. What's growing in us has to be incarnated, put at the service of the world in its ugliness as well as its beauty, its pain as well as its joy. Because ugliness needs beauty to heal it. Pain needs joy. Fear needs love. And who is to bring it if we can't incarnate what has been given to us? Sometimes, as I'm sure you will have experienced, the birth pangs are painful. And what is born is born out of confusion, suffering, dispossession, Grief, tears, frustration, confusion, demanding a patience, trust, and courage we can barely summon or endure, but which are somehow given to us until we reach the moment of liberation and a new creation fills us with such joy and love and hope, we forget what went before and are changed forever. Sometimes the incarnating of the gifts of God makes no apparent demand on us at all. We realize one day we are quite naturally doing something differently, more gently, more lovingly, more patiently, more confidently, more creatively, less angrily, less fearfully, less anxiously, less possessively. We have been doing that for a good while, but it's already so natural we haven't noticed it. Maybe someone else notices it. Maybe we never notice it ourselves. We have been given something as a consequence of our commitment to meditation entirely unconsciously, and are living it just as unself-consciously. The blessings of it reaching others quite unknown to us. The glory of God is a human being fully alive, said Irenaeus, a 2nd century theologian. And doesn't that sound wonderful and desirable? Can't we just imagine what that would be like and begin to list all the things we believe would make us happy? But there is another part to that quotation. The glory of a human being is the contemplation of God. You could also translate that as the glory of a human being is the vision of God or the seeing of God. And that second part is so important because it reminds us that becoming fully alive, fully incarnated, isn't about self-consciously getting what we want we think will make us fully alive. It's precisely the opposite. It's what happens while we have our attention turned away from ourselves and towards the other. So let's keep on meditating. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, taking us on that beautiful journey with you. I'm sure we were all tempted to stay in the cathedral as you were, and yet, as you say, allowing to be born within us. Really, you're giving us a lot of insight there into refreshing that whole notion of incarnation. So thank you, and very timely at this Christmas season. Thank you, Liz.
Pleasure.
We now are going to hear from Reverend Rosie Dell. Rosie's in New Zealand. She stayed up very late to be with us. And we thank you, Rosie, for that. And Rosie has been involved, I know, with the teacher formation program and has an interest in interfaith meditation, which we've shared. And she's going to talk to us about her journey of meditation this morning. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. It's good evening here. Just before I begin, it's a lovely coincidence that I'm speaking on this night because, Liz, I led a retreat in July using some of your material on the images of meditation. It's quite an honour to be following you. So, as you know, my name is Rosie and I live in Te Kaupita in New Zealand in the North Island. I'm an Anglican priest, and as well as being a novice, not yet an oblate, but a novice in our community, I'm an associate of a Cistercian abbey in New Zealand. The main theme that emerged for me as I was preparing this little talk was about seeds and also faithfulness and mutuality. So about the seeds, I've come to realise that I'm a seed sower, but only in as much as seeds have first been sown in me. I originally learnt meditation in a different modality at a time when I was away from the church. But when Jesus called me back to him, I closed the door on meditation. But about 6 months later, I heard about Christian meditation, and that was huge. I can still remember that moment. And it took me a while to reconcile the differences from what I'd first learned, but the practice took care of that, of course. I went through a long period of not finding a way to connect with other meditators, although I was one of the really early subscribers to our New Zealand newsletter. So I had a little thread of connection, and that was another way that seeds were there being sown in me. So my own practice was established, but I wasn't sharing the gift. I had been to an introductory course that an Anglican priest I knew had run, so I knew the value of sharing the gift, but I never felt that I was worthy of doing it or that I was even authorised to. Once I had been ordained a priest, I've tended to move cities quite a lot. And at one of those moves to a new city, I became, and it must have been the movement of God in my life, I became absolutely determined to find the local meditators. And it certainly took a bit of doing, but finally I was home. And through the people that I met there, I became aware of how I might learn more about meditation and our community. And eventually, it was a long eventually, I was able to go on a essential teaching weekend. And there, our national coordinator, Linda, truly empowered and equipped me to go out and share. So I'm just forever grateful, Linda, if you're listening. Now, as I said, because I move around a bit in my role as a priest, and here's where more seed sowing comes in, because wherever I am, I seem to be led to start a meditation group. So currently I run a weekly group at the hospital where I work as a chaplain, and it's a very transient group. People often only come once or maybe for a few weeks, but none are long term. So it's all about sowing seeds and leaving it to God to grow them. And I also have an online introductory group, which is equally disparate, but I hope that I make it a place of welcome and hospitality to whoever is there that particular week. But interestingly, the sense of community built through meditation that I've experienced, particularly since the COVID pandemic, by being part of online groups like this one, like Benedict's Well, has given me a place of stability from which to offer into the groups that I lead, which for some reason are forever changing just because of the type of group I'm called into. And I know that the attitude of welcome and hospitality that I try to convey in these groups is only a reflection of how God responds to me. And here is where the other little thread of faithfulness and mutuality emerges, because God accepts and welcomes me every time I sit to meditate whether I'm counting the seconds or whether I'm totally focused on the mantra with hardly a thought. I am accepted in that moment as I am, and so I come to believe and to truly experience in the depth of my being that I'm both lovable and that I'm deeply loved by God. So that is the seed that I believe God is inviting me to sow as I share the gift of meditation wherever I might be in this moment of ministry in my life. My faithfulness to God through the practice falls far short of God's faithfulness to me, and there have been even recently times in my life when the practice has dropped, such as just a few months ago or weeks ago really. My son was in hospital and I had to travel to be with him, and everything was out of the usual. But somehow the faithfulness I've given in the past carries me as if in a river of love, and God is always waiting there and welcoming when I return to sit in meditation. So the mutuality of God's love and my love for God is truly experienced in those times. So my faithfulness in all its shortcomings is only reflecting God's perfect faithfulness towards me. I might fail in my faithfulness, but God never fails in faithfulness. And there I find that mutuality of love and relationship that is enduring, ever deepening, and real. And here the call to follow the oblate journey comes in as my spirit yearns to follow towards the more, while in that paradoxical way of mystery, the deepest part of me experiences the joy of already being completely there, or should I say here, in the presence of the divine. So just to close, I am deeply grateful to God, to the practice, to those who have sown the seed in me and who continue to encourage and support me. And I can only pray that some of the seeds I am in some way sowing will in God's time similarly grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie, sharing with us so humanly, so authentically. Very, very beautiful, and an encouragement for us all, I'm sure. And we've all wondered about how meditation works in our life, how the seed planted and grows, how we do not know. So I think you've encouraged us along the path. Thank you for your witness, Rosie. Beautiful. Perhaps Josephine and Susan might say our closing prayer, and then we'll return to sign off.
May the divine assistance remain always with us.
Always with us and with our absent brothers and sisters. Amen.
Thank you both, leading us so naturally into our prayer and meditation. Thank you, Liz and Rosie, for enriching the space here together, and Julia for being with us when she wasn't well. Thank you to all the technical people, and we hold each other over these days of the coming of Christ, and we send every blessing of love and peace and joy and hope that the Christ child brings. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a
Thank you.
peaceful and
Merry Christmas to all.
Bye. Merry Christmas all.
God bless
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Bye-bye. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks. Merry Christmas.
There we are. Happy
Merry Christmas, everybody.
and thank you.
Peace be with you and love.